Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whifford.
Hello.
So today, we are going to be talking about the season finale for Sandman, which is episode 10,
Lost Hearts.
So Lost Hearts is a title here, and we have a lot to discuss with this because aside from just being episode 10, this is, like I had mentioned, the season finale for the Sandman, with a bonus episode thrown in at the end here for episode 11 that we'll talk about on another podcast here. But for this one here, we're talking just episode 10, and then going to give kind of like a series finale recap, I think, maybe talk about our thoughts on the series as a whole. But before we get into any of that, let's just give out the typical reminders here, where if you want to get in contact with the show, you can do that on Twitter at Fantasy Rewind, on Instagram at Fantasy Rewind Pod, or send us an email at Fantasy Rewind, or it's fantasyrewindpod at gmail.com. If you want to reach out, you can get a sticker for free. Just let us know you want one. We'll send it your way. All right. So before we dive into this episode here, Mike, we made a mistake.
Yeah, we did, and we just talked about it at the end of the last episode. Thank you for putting up with our mistakes, and I had it in my notes, but I forgot to talk about it from episode 9. A really important scene between Lita, Rose, and Morpheus, and this really starts to give Rose a little bit of bad blood in terms of Morpheus, which kind of bleeds into episode 10. Mm-hmm. So, Gilbert, when Gilbert's kind of talking with, driving Rose to the hotel in the last episode, he's talking about how people look for so many reasons to be unhappy. And, as he's talking, Rose falls asleep. And when she falls asleep, who does she wake up to in the dreaming? Is Lita. Lita's waiting for her, and it's like, "Oh, you're here! Like,
thanks for
let
coming.
Let me show you our house. Like, this is our happy home. You know, there's been some earthquake damage, aka vortex damage, aka you, Rose." But they go into the house, they're talking, and when you get in there, you just see like Hector's face, and it just looks like so upset, so crestfallen, and you're like, "What's happening?" And then it pans out a little bit, you're like, just see Morpheus just standing there. It's like, oh no, this isn't gonna go good, because he just talked about
Dad came home, he caught us having a party.
Yeah, pretty much. And Morpheus is like, hey, he can't be here. He's a ghost. He needs to go to the place he is when he's dead. He's like, you have created this thing that should not be here, and it's my job to make things right, because you're doing this is messing with the dreaming. You're blending the realms, and this is the effect of the vortex. And so he sends Hector back to wherever,
who knows where. Yeah,
Hector is, and Lita is overcome with grief, and Morpheus says that, hey, good news, you can keep the baby, but because he was conceived in the dreaming, which is technically me,
he's
my kid, and I will come for him at some point, so just take care of him, okay? You good with that? And she's just like no! Which is completely understandable, you know.
Yeah.
One, you've just fallen down this rabbit hole of dealing with your grief by just pretty much burying it, or like it didn't happen, you know, because now Hector's alive, he's in the dream, and I can be in the dream too, so it's like nothing happened. And then you lose him again, and then by the way,
you get told your baby, I'm taking your baby at some point in time.
Yeah, and you can understand like why Morpheus is doing this, because like, hello, this is obviously really messed up, and this, like he says, this is not a good way for her to deal with her grief in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Which is, I mean, I'd agree with that, but at the same time, it's like, Rose even brings this up, because he's like, this dream is over, because he's like, I'm done with this conversation with Rose and Lita. And, you know, Lita goes, but then Rose is like, no, it's not, and you're like, whoa, she's still there.
Yeah.
And it's showing you how powerful she's becoming. And she's just like, you don't mess with my friends, or like me or mine, and you know what, like, I'm gonna deal with all this on my own. And, you know, angsty, like, upset teen. And she's like, this dream's over, and just like wakes up.
Right. Like right before Morpheus has any chance to respond to her, she's like, no, I'm shutting you down. This dream is over. Boom, I'm out. Like mic drop, full on everything. And again, I think you hit the nail right in the head where like you talked about how it's just showing how much more powerful Rose is becoming and how much of a serious threat she's actually becoming as the Vortex.
Yeah. And so that's why as we get into chapter 10 here in Lost Hearts, Corinthian is, he's telling Rose, hey, I'm just trying to save you. And because she recognizes him as the Nightmare, right?
Yes.
And I'm just trying to save you from my boss. And, he's like, you're the Vortex and we could work together and you could create your own reality. And, oh, by the way, he actually just wants to kill you. Did he tell you that? He's not trying to keep you safe. He just wants you dead. And it's a bit of a revelation to us, the viewers, because, up until that point, you didn't get that vibe from Morpheus.
Right. He was always kind of protecting Rose, like helping her find her brother and like kind of being like that guardian angel type of role.
Yeah. And so this episode really splits into two parts here. You have the first part where it really focuses on Corinthian and Morpheus and kind of that interaction. And Rose is kind of sprinkled in throughout that one. Mm-hmm. But then the second half is really just Rose. And so we're going to come in here and Corinthian's basically just like, hey, Rose, like, listen, you can trust me. You don't have to. It's up to you. And he makes it seem like, hey, this is all your choice, your decision.
Right.
I'm not trying to force
I'm
you.
not
Whereas
holding you captive.
Morpheus wants to, right? Morpheus is like, you have to do it this way. I'm the opposite. I'm the good guy here. I just got to go downstairs and give this speech real quick. And he, when he goes, her and Jed both fall asleep. And the Corinthian is giving a speech to his collectors and inspiring them and saying how much, how they do what they do. They collect and they kill, whatever, because they have this shared dream, this shared vision. And he makes it sound so grand and majestic, like this thing they do, which is really just disgusting and terrible. And it really does. You start to see you really see the impact of Corinthians had on all these people. Mm-hmm. And who's to show up here but our boy Morpheus?
Well, also, not just him, our favorite being, Morpheus, but also you see Rose and Jed, who are asleep, kind of going around in a couple different ways here.
Yeah, but first there's that confrontation between Morpheus and Corinthian, because Morpheus goes up there and he's like, you're done with this. And he's like, starts to like absorb him and Corinthian's like, I'm not going willingly, and stabs him in the hand. He's like, how? The Vortex is here. By the way, Dad, I can do what I want. And so then we have Rose kind of waking into these people's dreams. Like not waking, but going into their dreams. And you sort of see how they're all connected.
It almost looks like they're at like a four-way intersection or something with like a dream or a nightmare or whatever you want to call it on each side.
She's in the center, yeah. Mm-hmm. And because their collective dream is right there and she's in that space and their dreams are just around her, right?
Right.
Yeah, I liked this fight a lot, kind of between Dream and Corinthian, even though it wasn't like a kick, pow, pow fight,
I'm glad it wasn't, because that doesn't really seem like Morpheus' style.
No. It was very much like a conversation and like a visual argument, sort of like, look at what's around you. This would be the reality. And Rose, yes, you're going to have to die, because if you don't, everything, all your friends, everyone, they're all gone.
Yeah, if you don't die, everyone else dies, including your brother.
Yeah. And so that's when Rose is like, I'm just shutting all this down. And she shuts it down. And when she does that, then Corinthian's kind of without power, so to speak. And
right. She basically tells Corinthian to shut up, tells Morpheus to shut up, and is like, I'm going to do this my own way. And goes away.
And then we have Dream and Morpheus back in the auditorium, and Dream's just, they have a little conversation there about how, Corinthian's trying to be like, I'm exactly what you made me. And and he's like, no, you're not. You're supposed to inspire them by being exactly what they shouldn't be, inspire them to not be this way. and instead you're a depravity. You're showing that you're trying to make them just like you. And you can tell that like Morpheus isn't like mad so much as just like disappointed.
Well, he also kind of looks at it as a personal failure as well, I feel like.
He does. And he's like, are you taking me back to the dreaming? Corinthian asks him, and he's like, no, I'm just unmaking you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, it pretty much is play-by-play right there from the comic, but I like the visual representation, including the little skull that was
the little skull is what I wanted to talk to you about, because I was like, wait, how is like his skull like a rat skull size thing? Like, it's so tiny.
It's just kind of like symbolic of the Corinthians like nightmare essence. Like you see kind of at the end there where he's creating. That's how I always kind of took it as. It's just like the piece that made the Corinthian. But then he kind of wakes up the serial, the collectors, if you will, and I really like that he did this because, prior before in history, he probably wouldn't have done this. He would have just gotten Corinthian and gone.
Right.
But instead,
Corinthian
he doesn't.
Was all he was concerned with. But now, like you said, he's looking at humanity almost as like, okay, well, if my creation did this, it's kind of my duty to set this right.
Yeah. And he's like, you guys sit there and you give yourself these little daydreams to make yourselves feel okay with what you do. Like, you have reasons for doing this. Like they were saying in the last episode, like, the one person was like, God tells me who to kill. And it's like, no, you tell yourself who to do this to.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm going to take that away. And so you have to live with the weight of what you did. You always looked at this as if you're the victim. Oh, no. No, you're not. And you see, like, when he does take that away, what do? Some people just weep.
They weep, they kill themselves, they turn themselves in.
Yeah.
And, like, you see everyone just, like, kind of realizing, yeah, I kind of suck, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
And they all have different ways of coping with that.
Yeah. I don't feel sorry for any
I don't either. I felt like it was a great little just desserts.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, this is Jed. I feel like at this point, Jed and Rose are really reunited. They're driving back in the car. Lita's calling him, I'm going into labor. And which is so exciting. Like, I was like, oh, you didn't even guess that Jed was there and you didn't even bring that up? That's kind of weird. But anyway, so they meet him at the hospital, and Lita calls Rose in, and Rose is called Unity, and like, hey, something might happen to me, if something were to happen to me, what would you do with Jed? Would you take care of Jed? And she's like, yes, absolutely, I would. She's like, I fixed everything with the lawyer, everything's good, so you guys are gonna come live with me. And it was very sweet, very
definitely was, yeah.
A little bit of a tear jerking moment there for me. But we had a Lita calling Rose in to talk to her, and Rose is telling her what's going to happen, and I thought Lita's response was really interesting because I felt like it was as much about preserving her baby as keeping Rose alive, because she's just telling her to kill Morpheus.
Yeah, she's like, do it, kill him, he killed Hector.
Yeah. Which is,
I mean, I understand because, like, again, this is a woman who is going through grief, has never dealt with the grief of losing her husband the first time.
Just lost him again.
Yeah, she just lost him a second time while she was pregnant. And so you have all these conflicting emotions of being happy for the baby, being vengeful and, like, hateful towards Morpheus, and again, just feeling loss upon loss by losing your husband twice. So, of course, Lita's going to want Morpheus dead.
Oh, and then on top of that, he's going to come for my baby, apparently. And if she fixated on her dead husband like she did, then you better believe she's going to probably fixate on this baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But anyway, we have a nice little recap there, kind of, where it's like flashback scenes of what's happening. And because Rose is kind of going into the dreaming and sort of it's tying everything together, really, is what it is about the vortex. I thought because she goes into the dreaming and she goes into Hal's dreams and all of the people there around her dreams, and which I thought were really, really good. Hale's performance, fantastic, as always. We had Martin Ten Bones show up again. We had Ken, who was actually cheating on Barbie in his dreams.
Fantasizing about cheating on Barbie with the receptionist.
Yes, and that obviously ends up impacting their real life relationship later on. But they have the it was almost hard to tell. It almost seemed like a dream within a dream, where the vortex was sucking all their dreams into one thing, right?
Yeah.
And then she was kind of like waking up, and Morpheus was there. It was almost like, I felt like it was almost like Morpheus making her realize, like, hey, this is what you can do to people, and I can still fix this at this point, but you're gonna have to go. And this is a beautiful scene where we actually get to meet Fiddler's Green. Gilbert shows up to offer his self in exchange for Rose Walker, and he's politely said he can't.
Yes.
And he just accepts, he's like, okay, well, I tried. I'm gonna go back to being a
big beautiful field.
Lush field and forest and just, beauty, really. And this is where we get the big reveal in just a few minutes, because Unity shows up in the library because she's dreaming. And she's talking with Lucian and talking about what her life would have been like. And then you can kind of tell it's going to play into something. And then when Dream is talking with Rose, and, he's making her realize, hey, if you don't go, it's going to have terrible consequences, and she seems to be on board.
Yeah, she comes to terms with the fact that she's going to have to die.
Yeah. And then Lucian shows up and is like, no, wait, my lord. And Unity comes forward and is talking about how she was supposed to be the vortex, and they discovered that in the library, and that things changed because the man with golden eyes and her being asleep, and it was so funny. The man with golden eyes, you get your answer on who that was. Was it surprising?
So yeah, I was a little surprised that it was Desire, because I don't know what I was expecting, but I kind of was like, where is all this Desire stuff leading to? And then when it shows Desire there with their golden eyes, I was like, hey, that makes perfect sense. It's a good tie together for everything we've been seeing all season long so far.
Yeah. And then I thought this was really interesting too, when when Unity is hey, take me instead, and Rose just pull out that thing that makes you the vortex and give it to me, and she pulls it out, and it's the heart,
right?
And it's the same heart that is the sigil of Desire.
For Desire, yeah, Desire's sigil, showing that Desire's been one of the people involved in all of this, or one of the big bads, almost, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. So Unity ends up sacrificing herself for Rose, and
it's a really sad moment too, though, because I just got a feel for Unity that she had her whole life taken from her by the sleeping sickness.
Well, and the Endless.
And the Endless, and then on top of her whole childhood, her whole prime of her life taken by sleeping, she wakes up, lives a few months, and then basically has the rest of her life taken away by the Endless. So it's one of those things where she just got a raw deal.
Yeah,
feel bad
she
for
did.
Unity, but at the same time, you gotta thank Unity for stepping up and doing a very noble thing at the end there, to sacrifice herself for Rose.
And because she did that, Morpheus did not take any Endless blood.
Mm-hmm.
Which was just a little detail that might be important or not later on,
Yeah, no, I was actually very curious as to what would happen if Morpheus killed another Endless, or an offspring of an Endless. And so I'm sure that's probably going to play out later on in the series, but I was like,
Everything's connected.
yeah, right. Marvel's everything is connected claim there. But just thinking about how that leaves the door wide open for season 2 of Sandman if it does happen.
Oh yeah. Speaking of,
Oh
we
yeah,
had a very
speaking of,
emotional part here. Well, yeah. Before we go to switch there,
Yeah.
we had a very emotional part. This is actually the scene that made me cry. Honestly, was when Morpheus was messing around with a new nightmare or dream that Lucian inquires about, and he apologizes to Lucian and says, kind of goes back on his whole like I need to do everything sort of bit. It shows he's changed. Like I don't need to be self-reliant. I have you. I have other members of the dreaming that will help me, and I can lean on you guys to help me. I know we have another piece here too where he goes to see Desire, which I thought was an epic scene. So we got a lot here,
but a lot still to unpack.
This scene where she's like, "Oh, you working on a new nightmare?" And he's like, "No, I'm working on a dream. You want to say hello?" And it's Goth, and she has beautiful wings, and
Goth the butterfly.
I was just like smiling from ear to ear, and just like tears going down my cheek because I was just like, oh my gosh, that's just so beautiful, because you could see the joy on her face from this, and what made you change, and it's like you could tell like the development that they build to from episode 1 all the way to now, just everything sort of coming together, like the realization about how people can change, and that it isn't your fault that like I messed up or I wasn't here, and like his development as a character is starting to have ripple effects on the other members of the dreaming. Did you have anything you wanted to add about that before we talked about Desire?
No, I thought that was good. I enjoyed that scene. I thought it was a good little payoff there, to see God get what they needed and what they asked for, and just like the change in Morpheus again. Like you've seen constant growth with him, and that's something that's been good to see. Like just
rewarding.
As far as like storytelling though, like seeing the main character, progress and change throughout the series. It's what you want to see in a good story, and we get that here.
Definitely. And then we kind of have him calling on Desire with her sigil, and that happened actually before this, but it doesn't matter. But I love this scene because Desire, like, their actress was so good. Just like, oh, come in, Morpheus. Just like in their little cat outfit, just right. Like hanging out.
I was like, okay, Desire, look at you go.
Yeah. And like Morpheus is just basically like, don't mess with me or mine again. And the whole hair grab and pull back and like looking, I was like, oh.
I've seen so many things about that.
I know.
It's been like
so fierce. It was really good. And then him walking out, and then she's like, or they're like,
next time.
They're
of
like,
course there'll be a next time.
Next time, I really got under your skin this time. Next time I'll draw blood. I was like, oh, wow, yeah. So good. But that is not the end of the episode, even though you thought it would have been.
It is not. It could have been, but instead they give a little tease for what's up ahead in the Sandman journey here. And for that, we go back to hell.
Yes. And apparently we meet one of the generals, which is one of the ones we saw in the comic. We didn't get to meet the first time. But they're talking to Lucifer and saying that they need to do something, like the demons and everyone's getting antsy and they want action, and even though they're not permitted to leave hell, they could expand its borders. And Lucifer has a devastating plan that's going to make everyone upset, from God to Morpheus to everyone, and it just looks so delicious, as Andy from The Office would say.
Yeah, I mean the conversation that Lucifer was having with Azazel, it basically was hinting at, hey, we need to go get revenge on Dream, and by the way, while we're at it, let's get revenge on God. Oh, and by the way, while we're at it, let's just take over everything.
Interesting. So you think that then they're because it didn't say what Lucifer's plan was. Just said that they wanted to, make everyone upset. So I was going to ask you, what do you think the plan is?
So I think there's going to be a little bit of a hell on earth situation, where you're going to see Lucifer, kind of encompass Earth itself within hell. And what that will do is that will take dreamers away from Dream's realm, because as we saw with Hector, dead people or people that are like meant to be in the afterlife, they don't dream. They're not supposed to dream. So if Lucifer is like mine and pulls them in, there'll be less people to dream to populate Dream's realm, and that could in turn weaken Dream. I'm kind of hypothesizing now. Is what I'm kind of doing.
That's fair.
And that also would make God a little upset as well, because Lucifer is like claiming souls for themselves as opposed to like letting judgment pass and carry out.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm hoping we get a season 2, because when we think about this series as a whole, like these episodes 1 through 10, we'll get to episode 11 next time.
Love it. So good.
It was just fantastic, right?
Yeah.
They really just knocked this out of the park. Everything was so satisfying. The character development was just on point. I think that was one of the strongest things for the series.
Oh, yeah. I 100% agree with you. I thought the acting throughout the series, everyone did a great job.
Gorgeous.
Visually stunning, of course. And I mean, great character development and character growth, like I had mentioned a little bit earlier here. Like, definitely probably my favorite fantasy adaptation as far as a TV series goes in a long time.
I think it'd be really neat for us at the end of this year, since we have so many fantasy series to talk about, to kind of go through and rank them, like the stuff we got into. I think that'd be really great.
We can do that. I think we should definitely do them, though, like, based on medium. You know what I mean? Like, comparing shows to shows and movies to movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think overall, Sandman was a fantastic romp. Well worth the watch.
Definitely a success.
One I am so excited to revisit, and hopefully we'll get a season 2. That would be fabulous.
So what that means is that we need all of you out there who have watched Sandman to go and tell like at least 3 more people about Sandman that you haven't told before, or follow up with everyone you have told to make sure they actually watch the series, because more views is a good thing, and we want this series to have another season, because it is expensive to make. And Neil Gaiman, he's been very honest with the fandom about that from the get-go, and so we just need to do what we can do to make sure season 2 happens. All right. But with all of that said, we hope that you all have enjoyed our Sandman coverage. Like Mike said, we have one more bonus episode left to talk about for Sandman, episode 11 here. But this is going to be it for the main season here. So this is going to be 2 nerds signing off. See ya.
Bye.